on chapter 8, which is on respiratory system. Okay, so first we are going to discuss on part A, which is on MCQ question. So basically it says here, which of the following, sekejap, saya nak pilih pen sekejap. Okay, which of the following is not true? Okay, not true about the efficiency of gas exchange. So if we look at the answer for each one, A, respiratory surface must be thin for fast gas exchange. So this is correct. Okay, so in order, yesterday we have looked at Fick's law. Okay, Fick's law of diffusion. You have the formula, and it says that dalam Fick's law tu ada R kan. So R is rate of diffusion. So in order to increase R, so for reaction for gas to occur for gas to diffuse really fast, so the respiratory surface has to be thin, and that is another feature of a respiratory surface, which is it has to be thin. Okay, so that gas can quickly diffuse across the cell membrane. Okay, for example, across the wall of the alveolus, which is one cell thick, and into the blood capillary, which is the wall of blood capillary, is also one cell thick. Okay, so the respiratory surface must be really thin. Okay, same goes to the cell membrane of amoeba. It is also thin. Okay, the skin is also thin for organism that depends on skin for respiration, such as, for example, earthworm. Okay, so B, respiratory surface must be thick for fast gas exchange. Obviously not lah, the opposite daripada statement A tu. So the answer would be B. Okay, so C, the path for diffusion is short. Okay, the path for diffusion is short for efficiency gas exchange. So betul lah kan, distance. In order to increase R, so D. Okay, distance has to be reduced. Okay, distance for which a gas exchange occur, for which gas diffuses across the wall has to be really short. Okay, across the wall of the alveolus and into the blood capillaries. Okay, so the distance has to be short. Okay, so statement C is correct. D, respiratory surface for exchange of gases between the cell and the respiratory medium must be large and moist. Okay, so large and moist is the feature of all respiratory surface, be it cell membrane, be it the skin, be it the alveolus. Okay, or the obviously for gills is obviously lah dia moist kan, sebab it is the organism or the fish or the aquatic organism is in the water. Okay, so it is large because most of the respiratory surface, they are highly folded. Okay, so you have the lamella of gills, you have the alveolus, bentuk dia macam ni kan. So you have many alveolus that is like that. Okay, so the respiratory surface has to be large. Okay, and respiratory medium, okay, we have two sources. We have the air and also we have the water. So air and water is where the organism will extract oxygen and will remove carbon dioxide. Okay, so air is for air is for terrestrial organism, and as for water is for the aquatic organism. Okay, so that is respiratory medium. You have two sources, air and water. Okay, so number 2, the pleural membrane, okay, that encloses the lung. Okay, so pleural membrane, kita tengok kat situ, they are continuous. Okay, they are continuous sac that protects the lung. So the pleural membrane, it has two layers. You have the visceral and the other one, the visceral. Kalau kita tengok kat nota semalam tu, ini awak kena tahu So the pleural membrane, it has two layers, and between the two layers you have the visceral cavity that is filled with fluid. Okay. Saya dah lepas. Inilah kan. Di situ pasal visceral tu. Ni, okay. So you have the parietal, visceral. Parietal visceral membrane is the outer membrane, okay, and visceral pleural membrane is the inner membrane, and in between the parietal and the visceral you have the fluid, okay, that function as lubricant, okay. So when you are when the lung expand, when you inhaled, there must be some kind of lubrication to reduce friction, okay, between the lung and also the rib cage. Mesti ada lubrication kat situ. Okay, so the answer will be B lah. Okay, pleural membrane forms a continuous sac that encloses and protects the lung. Contains fluid is the cavity. Membrane alone, it does not contains fluid, but the two layers of membrane, in between that you have the cavity that is filled with fluid. So is the muscular floor of the thoracic cavity. This one, it describes the diaphragm. Okay, diaphragm yang ni lah. Tak boleh nak conteng pula. Okay, diaphragm. This one here. Okay. Ini. Alright, give rise to millions of tiny bronchioles is referring to the bronchi. Okay. So number 3, Dalton's law of partial pressure stated that, okay, when the volume of a given quantity of gas increases, its pressure decreases. Salah lah. Okay. So it is actually for Dalton's law of partial pressure, where for example in the atmosphere you have many different gases. Yang kita tengok semalam ada nitrogen, ada oxygen, ada carbon dioxide, ada inert gases and also carbon dioxide. So each of these gas will exert its own pressure. Okay, so the answer will be B. Okay, so in the mixture of gases, for example in the atmosphere, okay, so the total pressure of the mixture, of the gas mixture, is the sum of the pressure of the individual gases. So in the atmosphere, you have the nitrogen, oxygen, inert gases, argon, okay, inert gases, and also carbon dioxide. So all these gases are found in the atmosphere, and each one will exert its own partial pressure. Okay, so number 4. Before we go into that one, so just to remind on the partial pressure. So at the atmosphere, if you look at here, okay. So the total atmospheric pressure of air, okay, at sea level is 760 millimeter mercury. For each of these gases, it has its own percentage of composition. So in order to get its partial pressure, kalikan je lah 760 kali the composition for each of the gases, and then you get the partial pressure for each of the gases. Okay, so yang kita nak concentrate kan adalah untuk oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay, partial pressure for oxygen is when you times 760 by 20%, 20.95%, then you get 159.2 millimeter mercury. So the atmospheric pressure for oxygen is higher compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in the lung. So which is in the lung is 105. Okay, so when you inhale, okay, so the oxygen from the atmosphere will enter into the lung because the partial pressure of oxygen outside is higher compared to your lung. So for human, we use negative pressure breathing. So when you inhale, the volume of your lung will increase, but the pressure inside the lung will decrease. Okay, so it forces the air from outside to enter into your lung. Okay, so kalau human, ingat we use negative pressure breathing, which is inside lung. The pressure is lower compared to the outside. For frogs, they use positive pressure breathing when the frog inhale, okay, it will expand its buccal cavity. So the purpose of expanding the buccal cavity is so that the air is stored inside the buccal cavity. So inside the buccal cavity, there is a high pressure that pushes the air into the lung. Okay, so kenapa kalau frog we call it as positive pressure breathing? Because inside the buccal cavity there is a high pressure compared to the outside, the atmosphere. Okay, so the buccal cavity creates a high pressure that forces the air to be pushed into the lung. So ingat tu perbezaan antara kedua-dua, positive pressure breathing for frogs and negative pressure breathing in human, for example. Okay. So number 4, the flow of air to the human respiratory would be, so ini dah tengok flow dia hari tu kan, semalam. So ada flow dia. So when you inhale, obviously through your nose, okay, normally through your nose, okay, and then it enters into the nasal cavity, and then yang ni saya tak nak confuse it goes down the pharynx first. Kan semalam saya cakap pharynx is the junction before it enters into the respiratory organ, okay, which is from the pharynx it leads to larynx to the trachea for the respiratory surface. Kalau dia juga junction pergi kepada digestive system kan. So pharynx, if it leads to the digestive system, it goes down the esophagus and into the stomach. Okay. So pharynx dulu, pharynx junction antara respiratory and also digestive. Okay, so larynx, semalam kita tengok it is the Adam's apple lah kan, voice box. Okay, and then into the trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveolus, blood circulation and tissue cells. Okay, so the answer would be A. Kalau kita tengok jawapan ni kan, untuk D ni macam sama je ke saya yang salah tengok? Just look through your answer for D. Nostril, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveolus, blood circulation, tissue cell. Sama kan turutan dia?
Sama dia.
Okay, so answer dia boleh A ataupun D. Okay, sama. Okay, B and C salah lah. B and C dia punya turutan yang kat sini terbalik. Okay, C pun salah juga. Sebab dia pergi trachea dulu baru larynx. Okay, salah. Okay. So below is the formula for the fixed law of diffusion. So kan R ni adalah apa? Rate of diffusion kan. So the purpose is to increase R. Okay, to increase the rate of diffusion. Okay. So D ni is respiratory constant. Itu kita tak usik sebab dia constant. Okay. A ni area, so area has to be large. Partial P ni, delta P ni is the difference between the partial pressure between two areas. For example, partial pressure in the alveolus and also partial pressure in the blood vessels. Okay, so kena ada perbezaan dari segi partial pressure. Kalau in the alveolus, it is 105 kan for oxygen. For blood, it is 100. So ada perbezaan kan, 105 pergi ke 100. Daripada blood into your body tissues, it is body tissue is 40. Nampak perbezaan tu kan? So there must be a difference in the partial pressure for the gas involved. Okay, in this case kita nak concentrate pada oxygen and also carbon dioxide lah. They are respiratory gases. So the difference in partial pressure has to increase also. Distance, okay, distance must be short. Okay, so kedudukan antara alveolus dengan blood capillaries. So blood capillaries they surround the alveolus, kan? So dia ada pada alveolus tu dengan banyaknya. So the distance must be short. Okay, sama juga dengan blood capillaries in the lamella of fish gills. Sama juga in the parabronchi that are found in the lungs of bird. Okay, so in the question it says which of the following represents the distance across which diffusion takes place. So D lah, kan? So D, okay, distance. Okay, so R is rate of diffusion. You want to increase the distance, decrease. Difference in partial pressure, you want to increase it. Area, you want to increase the area also. Okay, in order to get increase in R. Okay. So 6, which of the following is true about peripheral chemoreceptors? So untuk detect perubahan chemoreceptor ni is is to detect the okay, to regulate your breathing. Okay, so sama ada nak breathe more heavily or secara normal. So if your body cells produces more carbon dioxide, your body cell respire more. Okay, so this will produce more carbon dioxide, and the carbon dioxide will react with water, and it produces carbonic acid CH2CO3, and this will dissociate kan, jadi bicarbonate ion HCO3 minus plus H plus. Okay, so the presence of hydrogen ion in your blood, okay, will cause your blood to be acidic. Okay, so this indicates that your body will need to breathe more, okay, to release more of the carbon dioxide that your body produce, and to breathe in more oxygen. Okay, so to supply more oxygen into your body, so that your body cell is supplied with oxygen. Okay, so kita ada dua kan, kita semalam kita ada central chemoreceptor, and the other one we have peripheral chemoreceptor. So for peripheral chemoreceptor, dia akan detect dua perubahan, which is carbon dioxide concentration and also hydrogen ion concentration, the pH. Tapi kalau central chemoreceptor, it only detects hydrogen ion concentration, the change in the pH. Okay, so kalau kita tengok dekat jawapan ni, it only has sensitivities towards hydrogen ion. Salah lah, hydrogen ion and also carbon dioxide. Okay, kalau hydrogen ion saja, it is central chemoreceptor only. Okay, so it does not have sensitivity towards hydrogen ion, lagilah salah. Okay, it consists of aerotic body and keratic bodies. This one is the answer if I'm not mistaken. Okay, betul lah. Okay, so the answer will be C lah kan. So dia punya senses dia ada pada aorta, which is at the aorta you have the aortic bodies, and the other one is located at the carotid artery, which is at the carotid artery you have the carotid bodies to detect the change in carbon dioxide concentration and hydrogen ion concentration. So the answer will be C lah. So D, it consists of aortic bodies and central chemoreceptor, salah kan. So dua chemoreceptor adalah, yang pertama central chemoreceptor, yang kedua adalah peripheral chemoreceptor. So ini dalam part yang dalam nota awak yang kat bahagian sini breathing control ni, okay, that involve the central chemoreceptor and also peripheral chemoreceptors. Okay, so this is to regulate breathing. Okay, so number 7, which of the following best describe hemoglobin? Okay, so hemoglobin, as you know, they are pigments that are found in each of your red blood cells, your erythrocyte. So each erythrocyte, each red blood cell will have thousands, okay, thousands, about 250,000 hemoglobin pigment in each red blood cells. Okay, so imagine lah, so how many oxygen can a red blood cell carry? Sebab satu hemoglobin will bind to 4 molecule of oxygen. Okay, so sebab apa? Hemoglobin ni it consists of 4 polypeptide chain, and each of the polypeptide chain has a hem group, and within the hem group you have the iron, okay, iron, ferrum, which bind to oxygen molecule. Okay, so each hemoglobin will bind to an oxygen molecule. Okay, so each hem group. So maksudnya satu hemoglobin bind to 4 oxygen molecule or 8 oxygen atom. Okay, so if you look at the answer, so hemoglobin has the affinity for oxygen, obviously. Okay, so when oxygen binds to the hemoglobin, it forms oxyhemoglobin. So number 1 is correct. Number 2 has high affinity for carbon dioxide, obviously also. Okay, so carbon dioxide, if we look at here, okay, 20% of carbon dioxide will bind to hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. Okay, so this one, it forms carbaminohemoglobin. 20% of carbon dioxide will bind to hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. Number 3, each hem group has an atom of magnesium. Salah tadi saya cakap apa? Iron, ferrum. Okay, iron or ferrum. So number 4, it is a protein with organic compounds called hem group. Betul lah? Okay, so each of the polypeptide chain has a hem group, okay, that binds to oxygen. So each one binds to oxygen molecule. So one hemoglobin will bind to 4 oxygen molecule. Okay, so the answer will be 1, 2, and 4, which is C. Okay, C. Okay, so number 8, how many percent of carbon dioxide is transported in the form of bicarbonate ion? So if you look at the notes here, it is 72%. Okay, most of the carbon dioxide in your body is carried in your blood in the form of bicarbonate ion. Daripada reaction yang saya cakap tadi lah kan. So kalau tengok kat sini, 7 to 8%, okay, as dissolved carbon dioxide that dissolve in the blood plasma. So ini yang pertama. Okay, cara pertama carbon dioxide is carried in your blood. Okay, 7 to 10%. So ini as dissolved carbon dioxide in blood plasma. Okay, 20% in the form of carbaminohemoglobin. Okay, 100% tak ada apa-apa pun. Okay. So ini pecahan percentage ni you have to remember. Okay, kena ingat. Okay. So number 9, this animal uses skin as organ exchange, as a gas exchange organ, and it can breathe well in moist places. So the animal would be, dia guna skin kan? So dia duduk kat tempat yang moist. Obviously not bee, not human, not amoeba, it is worm. Okay, sebab worm, amoeba does not have skin. It is a one cell organism. They only have cell membrane. They don't have skin. Human obviously not. They use lung. Bees, they use tracheal system. Okay, so the answer will be worm. So worm, okay, they use their skin, and beneath the skin they have many blood capillaries. So oxygen just diffuse across the moist skin and into the blood capillaries that is located just beneath the skin to be distributed throughout the body. Okay. Number 10, insects possesses unique respiratory system known as the tracheal system lah, tracheal system. Okay, which is branches of air tubes. Okay, which is the respiratory gas, oxygen will enter into spiracle. Okay, spiracle and into the tubes until the tube leads to individual cells. Okay, so that is for insects. Okay, kalau cross current ni dalam bird okay, birds. Counter current dalam fish. Okay, counter current. So ingat semalam kita belajar pasal counter current exchange in fish, where the flow of water is in the opposite direction as the flow of blood in the blood vessels in the lamella, okay, of fish gill. So this is to extract as much as oxygen as possible from the water into the blood, okay, of in the blood vessels of fish, okay, located in the gills. Okay, so far for objective ada soalan tak? Faham
Faham.
Okay. Okay, so now we move on to the next part, which is part B for question number 1. Okay, structured question here. Okay, so figure 1 shows a structure of a human lung. So the lungs are organs occupying the thoracic cavity. So draw a line and label the following structure. Okay, so kat soalan ni awak tengok make sure bila soalan instruct awak buat sesuatu benda tu, awak buat macam soalan tu suruh lah. Faham? So kat sini kata apa? Draw a line and label. Keyword dia kat sini So maksudnya okay, dekat sini dia dah bagi B and C. B awak kena label B for bronchiole kan, C for trachea. So mana bronchiole? So bronchiole kat sini kan, yang branch ni kan. So awak ambil pembaris, yang ni saya tak ada pembaris. So ambil pembaris, just draw it. Okay, draw a line and label B for bronchiole. Okay, and then trachea, just draw a line, C for trachea. Okay, macam tu je. Kan, just for you to locate. Tapi kalau macam contohnya awak buat macam mana? Awak buat macam ni. Macam tu awak circlekan dia kan. Okay, ni trachea. Walaupun location dia dah betul, kan? Like awak dah, okay, awak dah bulatkan. Okay, tu trachea. Awak dah bulat, okay, ini bronchioles. Betul dah location dia. But you are not answering, you are not following, you are not answering as what the question asks you to do. Faham tak? So awak tak draw line, awak tak label properly, awak just bulatkan macam ni. Walaupun betul tempat dia, salah. Faham salah very strict kalau macam tu. Tengok soalan dia nak macam mana. Okay. So selalunya senang je ni kan. Macam ni, tapi but because you read the question carelessly, so 2 markah awak hilang macam tu je. Okay, so make sure you look at the question properly. Number 2, state features of the alveoli that allow efficient gas exchange. So alveoli, it has several features that allows the alveoli to function as the respiratory surface, and it does the job very efficiently. Okay, so apa dia punya feature dia? Okay, so malam saya draw dia macam ni kan. So the alveoli, okay, will provide a large surface area for gas exchange. So there are millions of alveoli inside each of the lungs, okay, and so this is to provide a large surface area for gas exchange. So point number 1 tadi kan, I repeat, the alveoli provide a large surface area for gas exchange. That is the first feature. Second feature, apa yang syarat untuk jadi respiratory surface? There has to be moist. Okay, so the surface of the alveoli is moist. Okay, for gases to dissolve before diffusion can occur. Okay, so gas has to dissolve first before it can diffuse across the wall of the alveolus. Okay, so that is the second point. Okay, the surface of the alveolus is moist for gases to dissolve before diffusion can occur. Second point. Okay, third feature of alveolus is that it is what? It is one cell thick. Okay, it is one cell thick. So the wall of the alveolus, okay, it is only one cell thick. Okay, so this is to allow gas to dissolve and diffuse easily. Okay, so yang keempat, point yang bonus, boleh letak, is that apa? There are many blood capillaries. Okay, there are many blood capillaries surrounding the alveolus. Okay, so there are many blood capillaries or numerous blood capillaries that surround each alveolus, and this is to provide large volume for gas exchange. Okay, so I've gave you four features. You just choose any 3. Okay, so 3 markah, 3 point lah, 3 features. Kalau dalam soalan kan nak buat 4, tapi point yang pertama salah. Kan, point yang pertama salah. Ini saya bagi tips Point pertama salah. Tapi point yang kedua, ketiga, keempat betul. Examiner hanya ambil the first 3. Okay, so you must really make sure that you know the answer exactly. So yang jawapan yang betul-betul sure, awak tulis yang paling atas. Okay, so that is how the marking is done. Okay. So the examiner wants to know that you really sure of your answer. Bukan main-main teka je. Awak boleh list sampai 10 pun kan. Sampai 10 pun awak boleh list kan. Tapi kalau main teka je, salah, faham tak? So that's why cara dia marking macam tu. So you have to know exactly your answer. Okay. Number 3, explain why when the wall of the right lung side of the thorax is punctured, bocor, the right lung is deflated. So that's why you inhale again. So when you inhale, you increase the volume inside the lung, okay, so that the pressure inside the lung will be lower than the atmosphere. Okay, so that when you breathe in, your lung expand, pressure inside the lung is lowered, so that the pressure outside is higher, so that the air can enter into your lung. But when your lung is punctured, so tak boleh lah nak berlaku inflation tu kan. So the lung will be deflate lah, because deflate. Dia tak boleh nak create high pressure, high volume inside the lung tu. Okay. So 2 marks. Okay, the first one, lungs are only able to inflate, okay, when the air pressure in the lung is higher than the atmospheric pressure. That is the first point. Okay, so lungs, I repeat, lungs are only able to inflate. You want to inflate your lungs, okay, when the air pressure in the lungs is higher than the atmospheric pressure. Okay, so a puncture of the wall of the thorax at the lung side will cause the air pressure to become equal to the atmospheric pressure. So bila the lung cannot inflate, so the pressure inside the lung and the outside will be the same. So the air from the outside cannot enter into your lung. Okay. Salah ni. Kalau kita tengok sekejap kita tengok dulu yang gambar rajah ni. Ni kan. Boyle's law ni. So according to the Boyle's law, when the volume of a given quantity of gas increases, pressure decreases. So when you inhale, you want to increase the volume inside the thoracic cavity, your lung, so that the pressure decrease, so that the atmospheric pressure is higher compared to your lung. Itu purpose dia, okay? So when lungs, kita repeat balik sebenarnya. So when lungs are supposed to be able to inflate, so that the pressure outside is higher compared to inside of the lung. That is supposed to be the answer. Okay? You inflate your lungs, volume increase, pressure inside the lung decrease, pressure outside, the atmosphere is higher, that enables the air outside to enter into your lung. Okay, so when it is it cannot inflate, the lung is deflated. So this will create the pressure inside the lung is the same as the outside. Okay, so the air cannot enter into the lung. Okay, so that is the consequences. Okay, so a puncture of the wall of the thorax at the right lung, okay, will cause the air pressure to become equal to the atmospheric pressure. Okay, so itu jawapan dia lah. Okay, next question. Okay, describe the fate of the air as it enters the nostril and flow through the nostril cavity. Just I mentioned semalam in the lecture, so even though the air outside is cold, when you breathe in the cold air, as the air enters into your nostril cavity, so the air will be filtered. Okay, there are cilia, there are nose hair. Okay, so the air will be filtered of the contaminant that are found in the air. So the air that you breathe in is not really clean, it is polluted, it has many debris, it has many pollutant, it has virus and pathogen and whatever. So all those will be filtered, okay? And then there are moisture, and then there are brought to body temperature. Okay, 3 markah. Okay, first one, the air will be filtered, will be moistened, and brought to body temperature. Okay, so next one, A. Okay, answer the following question regarding the transportation of carbon dioxide from body tissues to the lungs in the human. Okay, to the lungs in the human. So number one, what is the name of the enzyme involved in the formation of carbonic acid? So when your cell respire, produces carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide, this carbon dioxide will enter into your red blood cells. It reacts with water. Can it forms carbonic acid. So the enzyme involved in this reaction is known as apa? Carbonic anhydrase. Okay, anhydrase. So this reaction occurs in the red blood cells. Okay, so from here, it will form what? It will carbonic acid will split, okay, to form bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. So some of the hydrogen ion will bind also to hemoglobin. Okay, so the rest of the reaction awak tahulah kan. Ini saya sketch kat sini. So dia akan split jadi bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. Okay, hydrogen ion will bind, some of it will bind to hemoglobin in the red blood cell. Yes. Tapi jawapan dia ini, carbonic anhydrase. Okay, anhydrase. Number 2, okay, in order to form carbaminohemoglobin, which part of the hemoglobin carbon dioxide bind to? It will bind to the amino ends. Okay, the amino ends of the hemoglobin polypeptide chain. So that is the answer lah. The amino ends of chains. Okay. So number 3, most of the bicarbonate, okay, make sure dia punya subscript 3, superscript minus tu betul-betul letak dia. Okay. Most of the bicarbonate ion are carried in the bloodstream to the lungs. Okay. So inilah, ini kan. So dia akan keluar daripada red blood cells and carried in the blood plasma kan. Berapa persen? 72% kan. Okay, 72% as bicarbonate ion that is carried in the blood plasma. Okay, so most bicarbonate ion, most tu sebab apa? 72%. Okay, most of the bicarbonate ion are carried in the bloodstream to the lungs. So what happen as they reach the lung? Opposite reaction lah. So yang reaction ni, kan, reaction ni berlaku dalam red blood cells. So maksudnya opposite reaction. So bicarbonate ion in the blood plasma will enter back into the red blood cells and the opposite reaction occurs. Tak boleh tulis opposite reaction, you kena explain lah. Okay, so bicarbonate ion react with hydrogen ions, react with the hydrogen ion that is released from the hemoglobin, and it forms carbonic acid, and from carbonic acid it will form carbon dioxide and also water with the reaction catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. So the carbon dioxide then diffuse out of the red blood cells into the blood plasma and out of the blood capillaries into interstitial fluid and enters into the alveolus in the lung. Okay, opposite reaction. Okay, opposite reaction. Yang ni yang berlaku daripada lung. Ini bukan lung, ini daripada body cells, kan? Body cells that produce carbon dioxide, kan? Okay, so dia akan bila dah reach lung, so the opposite reaction will occur. Okay, daripada blood plasma enter into red blood cells, this reaction occurs. You have to explain. Okay, and then carbon dioxide will diffuse into the blood plasma out from the blood capillaries, diffuse across the wall of the blood capillaries into interstitial fluid, into the diffuse through the wall of the alveolus into the alveolar air space to be exhaled out into the atmosphere. Okay, so dua markah je dia nak, so sama je lah kan. So saya bagilah kat sini. Okay, so in the lungs, yang ni saya baca jawapan if you want. Okay, so in the lungs, bicarbonate ion diffuses from the plasma into the red blood cells, combining with hydrogen ions, okay, released from the hemoglobin to form carbonic acid. Semua ayat tadi satu markah. Okay, so and then carbonic acid, tengok reaction ni kan, carbonic acid is converted back to water and also carbon dioxide. Okay, dua markah. So number 2, okay, question B. Tobacco cigarettes, okay, tobacco cigarette smoking harms nearly every organ in the body. So it causes diseases and reduces the health of smoker and non-smokers. So list 3 chemicals that can be found in tobacco cigarette. Kalau tahu ada list banyak dalam table tu, just take 3. Tapi, kena ingatlah, bukan dalam exam you refer to your notes. Saya haramkan. Saya cakap siap kat sini, saya haramkan awak refer kepada apa-apa walaupun tak ada orang surrounding awak ke apa ke, saya haramkan awak refer kepada apa-apa notes, apa-apa sumber masa exam nanti. Tolong saya tak nak ada mana-mana student saya S9 ke, S10 ke, S52 ke, S51 ke, S24 ke, any of the student that watch this video, saya tak nak ada sesiapa tiru masa exam. Please. Okay. Latihan tak apa. Okay. Masa kita buat latihan tak apa. Revision tak apa. Exam, quiz, saya tak reda kalau awak tiru. Okay. So dalam ni ada banyak. Kan? So just pick any 3. And then you just list, okay, in your answer, okay. So it can be methanol, it can be acetic acid, arsenic, ammonia, hexamine, okay, stearic acid. Kalau saya enlarge kat sini ada banyak lagi. Ada metals kan, ada copper, ada gold tu, okay. Zinc, all these chemicals, okay. So these are the cancer-causing agents that are found in the cigarettes. Okay, cadmium, nickel, all these chemicals. Okay. Okay, so number 2, if a person inhales smokes, okay, describe the effects that occurs to the respiratory system. Okay, the effects of inhaling the smoke. First, okay, markah dua markah, 2 marks. So toxic substances paralyze the cilia lining the trachea, the cilia lining in the trachea and bronchi. So as you know, the trachea, the bronchi are lined with cilia. Okay, the epithelial cells, they have cilia. So the function of the cilia is to function as filters and also to trap mucus that has trapped the contaminant. So once the mucus trap the contaminant, can ada combination between the mucus and also the contaminant. So the cilia will swipe, okay, the mucus upward until it reaches the pharynx tadi tu kan, and then to be swallowed in the stomach, okay, swallowed down the esophagus, down the stomach. Okay, if you inhale the smoke, okay, so this will paralyze the cilia, tak boleh tak ada sweeping motion tu kan, sweeping action tu. Okay, so this will paralyze the cilia, okay, lining the trachea and also the bronchi. The effect is that for the second point, it prevents the removal of inhaled particles. Okay, so it gets into your lungs. Okay, so all the contaminants will not be filtered, will not be trapped by mucus, and then they will get into your lungs. Okay, so dalam gambar ni, as you can see, the difference between the healthy lungs and also the lung of a smoker. Okay. Okay, so done with that question. So now we move on to the next question. Okay, so for question C, in oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, okay, what causes Bohr shift to move towards the right? Kalau dalam graph tu kan, kat sini adalah percentage of oxygen and percentage of oxygen that binds to the hemoglobin. Kat sini different parts of your body. So you have the lungs, kan? You have the tissue at rest, kan? And then tissue yang dalam keadaan dalam exercise. Okay. So dalam keadaan normal, graf dia macam ni. Kan? Ini 100%. So your hemoglobin will be 98%. Hemoglobin is 98% saturated with oxygen. Maksudnya when your blood that carries hemoglobin reaches the lung, so about 98% of the hemoglobin will be packed with oxygen. Sebab apa? Hemoglobin binds to oxygen. But ini tak macam ni kan, graf dia macam ni. Sebab saya ada label dia kat sini. Okay. Erase. Okay. Macam tu. Okay, so when it reaches body tissue, so the hemoglobin will release oxygen. Sebab apa? When the blood that carries hemoglobin reaches your body tissue, the hemoglobin has to release oxygen. Nama pun apa? Dissociation kan? Hemoglobin will release oxygen to the respiring body tissue. Okay, so when the hemoglobin leaves the body tissue, dia akan still 75 ke apa-apa, 70 plus lah. Kita tengok nota lah. Okay. About 75%. Okay, 75% is still filled with or the hemoglobin still binds to the oxygen. Okay, tapi kalau untuk respiring tissue, nampak tak? Dia punya banyaknya hemoglobin akan release oxygen tu kat situ. Kalau kita tengok kat graf ni, akan left with about 20% macam tu kan? 20% lah. Ini sepatutnya kat bawah lagi lah. 20% of the hemoglobin will still bind to oxygen. So banyak. Daripada 98 kan? 98 bila dia pergi kat respiring tissue, banyak sangat dia akan release oxygen sebab the respiring tissue, the body cells that for example that when you are exercising, you will require more oxygen kan? Tapi dalam keadaan rest, tak sebanyak yang hemoglobin akan release oksigen tu. Okay, sikit je. Okay, so Bohr shift ni kan, so for Bohr shift, ini dalam keadaan pH awak normal, blood pH is 7.4, okay, 7.4. But when your blood pH drops, okay, which it becomes a bit acidic kan, which is 7.2, so the graph will shift to the right. Okay, dia akan shift ke kanan. Okay, ke kanan. Okay, shift to the right. Okay, so ini untuk bila pH, blood pH turun to 7.2. 7.2 because why? Because more hydrogen ion are present in the blood, because daripada reaction tadi lah kan, carbon dioxide that reacts with water, form carbonic acid, split into bicarbonate ion and also hydrogen ion. So ini dia indicate that your body is producing more carbon dioxide than usual. Okay, so when your body produces more carbon dioxide than usual, means that your cell's body requires more oxygen. So more oxygen means that more of the hemoglobin will release more oxygen. Itu je lah kan. So dia akan shift to the right. The graph will shift to the right. That is Bohr shift when the blood becomes acidic, which is pH jadi 7.2. Kalau tengok dalam dia punya explanation ni, okay, it says here carbon dioxide react with water forming carbonic acids, kan? Yang reaction ni saya tulis balik semula, plus carbon dioxide plus water forms carbonic acid, kan? So dia akan jadi H2CO3 kan? Okay. 3 minus plus H plus. So this hydrogen ion causes the pH to become 7.2 jadi 7.4 jadi 7.2. Okay. So forming carbonic acid and lowers the pH, which decreases the affinity. Kan, bila pH turun sebab banyak hydrogen ion, so this decreases the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen. So maksudnya at this point your body requires more oxygen, so therefore hemoglobin can easily release the oxygen to the cell, okay, to your body cells. So an effect called as Bohr shift. Okay, the dissociation curve moves towards the right. This indicates that the hemoglobin can easily release the oxygen, has less affinity. The hemoglobin has less affinity to bind to oxygen, so it releases more oxygen to the body cell. Okay, so thus where oxygen production is greater, hemoglobin releases more oxygen. Sebab itu indicate apa? The cell is requiring more oxygen. They undergo more cellular respiration. Requires more oxygen, produces more carbon dioxide. Okay, which can be used to support more cellular respiration. That is Bohr effect lah. Okay, so itu dia punya explanation, tapi dia nak 2 markah je. Okay, so the first point, the graph move to the right because carbon dioxide reacts with water to form carbonic acid. First point. Second point, this lowers the pH, which causes the hemoglobin has lower affinity, okay, to bind to oxygen. Okay, that is for the second point. Okay. Okay, so for question number 3. So far untuk oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, do you have any question? None? Okay. So we proceed to, saya assume awak faham Okay. So question 3. Respiratory surface of a frog involve the skin and the lung. Okay, so for frogs, because it involves skin and the lung, so we call it as the pulmocutaneous circuit. Okay, pulmocutaneous respiration. Okay. Number 1, state and explain the type of breathing for a frog which allows air to enter the lungs. Tadi saya ada mention kan pasal positive pressure breathing. So point yang pertama, that is the first point. Frog breathe using positive pressure breathing. Second point, macam mana nak achieve positive pressure breathing tu? So second point, they will create, okay, greater than atmospheric pressure during breathing. Second point. Okay, the frog creates greater than the atmospheric pressure during breathing. Macam mana nak create? Pressure outside is lower than inside of the body. Inside of the body, specifically, it refers to the buccal cavity. The pressure inside the buccal cavity. So, how to create the high pressure inside the buccal cavity? Third point is that they will fill the buccal cavity with air. Okay, inflate the buccal cavity and filled with air from outside. Okay, filled with air. That tu dah tiga point dah, kan? So another point that you could write. So in order for the air inside the buccal cavity to enter into the lung, okay, so they will close their nostril and their mouth. Okay, that is for the fourth point. And then bila dah tutup mulut dengan hidung, so what happen? Next is that they will elevate the floor of their oral cavity. So this is to reduce the volume and increase the pressure inside the buccal cavity, so that the high pressure inside the buccal cavity will cause the air to push, down the trachea to enter into the lung. Cubalah buat, kan, buat kembungkan awak punya mulut, macam tu lah, dengan awak kembung mulut awak tu, it acts as the buccal cavity, and then you close your mouth and nose and push the floor, kan, of your dagu kat sini. So this pushes the air into the lung. Obviously kita tak bernafas dengan cara macam tu secara normal, kan. We just expand our thoracic cavity. So untuk human we use negative pressure breathing. Okay, tapi kalau frog they use positive pressure breathing. Okay, tak ada manusia yang kumpul dulu udara dalam mulut dia tu dia tolak ke dalam. That is not normal. Okay, itu untuk frog sahaja. Okay. Okay, so next, number 2, okay, state the type of respiration which allows exchange of gases through the moist skin. State the type of respiration which allows exchange of gases through the moist skin. So ini type of respiration, okay, untuk frog that use moist skin. Tadi kalau dia melibatkan skin and lung altogether, we call it as pulmocutaneous pulmocutaneous respiration. Tapi because this one dia nak untuk skin saja, so it is cutaneous respiration. Okay, cutaneous respiration. So kalau if you refer to your notes here, okay, cutaneous respiration. Okay. Okay, so that is the answer for 2A. B, give reasons why bird evolve two-cycle breathing processes. Two-cycle breathing process untuk bird, ya. So this is to allow the bird to efficiently extract oxygen from the air during breathing, especially when the bird is flying lah. So the flying of the bird requires more energy, more oxygen supply, so that the bird can produce more energy. Okay, so flying is a high metabolic activity. It requires more oxygen to provide more, to produce more energy. Okay, so in order to allow the lung to be continuously supplied with oxygen for bird, okay, so they will evolve a two-cycle breathing process. Maksudnya 2 kali inhalation, 2 kali exhalation. So when inhale, bird ni they have what? 2 air sac, kan? Anterior air sac and posterior air sac, and in between you have the lungs. Okay, so when the bird breathe in, inhale, so the air, okay, will pass through the trachea and enter straight into the posterior air sac. Pergi kat belakang tu, air sac yang kat belakang. So that is during inhalation. Both air sac ni will expand, inflate. Okay, will inflate or expand so that the fresh air enters into the posterior air sac, and the stale air in the lungs enter into the anterior air sac. Okay, this is during inhalation. Then dua air sac to expand, posterior filled with fresh air, anterior stale air. And then during exhalation, both air sac will deflate. So the fresh air inside the posterior air sac enters into the lung. Fresh air contains high concentration of oxygen, and the used air inside the anterior will move out through the trachea and exhale out. Okay, move out of the bird's respiratory system. Okay, so that is two-cycle breathing process. So the air that move from the trachea into the posterior air sac, into the lung, into the anterior air sac and out. So this is one direction of airflow. Okay, unidirection, one direction. Okay, so itulah jawapan dia. Okay, so you should be able to explain. So dua markah, give reason why birds evolve a two-cycle breathing process, because number one, flying is a high energy activity. Okay, second, therefore birds have a high metabolic rate, okay, and requires more oxygen, okay, during flying. So they evolve a two-cycle breathing process. Okay. So kalau macam kita, we human, when we inhale baru oksigen masuk dalam lung. Tapi bila kita tengah exhale, tak ada udara yang masuk, tak ada oksigen yang masuk. Okay, tapi kalau bird ni bila dia inhale ke, dia exhale ke, the lung is always supplied with oksigen, sebab udara yang fresh akan disimpan sementara dekat posterior air sac. Okay. Okay. So B dah. C. Okay. Use the following statement below to describe the efficiency of fish gill in efficient gas exchange, which is, as the low oxygenated blood enters the lamella, it travels in the direction opposite to the water. Ini yang saya mention tadi apa? The fish adaptation for respiration is that they will use counter current exchange. The flow of the water will be in the opposite direction as the flow of blood in the blood vessels in the lamella within the gills. Okay, they flow in the opposite direction. So as water that has higher concentration of oxygen, fresher water, passes the blood that flows in the opposite direction, the oxygen will be continuously, okay, extracted and enter into the blood capillaries within the lamella. Okay, so sentiasa akan ada perbezaan antara concentration of oxygen in the water and concentration of oxygen in the blood. Yang kita tengok dalam gambar hari tu apa? 150 partial pressure of oxygen in the water for oxygen, 140 in the blood. So gradually decrease. Dia bukan steeply decrease. Kalau steeply decrease, 150 dia jumpa dengan 20, macam saya explain hari tu, there is a high difference in the partial pressure of oxygen. So bila perbezaan yang tinggi tu akan menyebabkan oksigen tu secara mendadak masuk ke dalam blood vessels of fish gills, so dia akan cepat-cepat reach equilibrium. So in that way, kalau dia flow in co-current, kan, so proses tu tak boleh nak extract as much oxygen as possible. Tapi bila gradual decrease, so this will make sure the oxygen from the water can be extracted secara maximum from water into the blood in the fish gill. Okay. So first point, so the adaptation for fish to obtain respiratory gases is counter current exchange. Ingat counter current, two fluid flows in the opposite direction and involve the exchange of something. In this case, water and blood flow exchange respiratory gas, oxygen from water into the blood. Okay, in the lamella of fish gill. So number two, oxygen is transferred, okay, from the water that flows on the surface of the lamella. Okay, oxygen is transferred from the water that flows on the surface of the lamella. Third point, okay, from the lamella, from water into the blood, okay, into the blood that flows in the opposite direction, okay, within the lamella. So water flows in the opposite direction as blood in the lamella. So therefore, next point, the lamella encounters fresher water with ever higher oxygen concentration. So each point though, oxygen concentration of concentration of oxygen in the water is always higher compared to the oxygen concentration in the blood. So oxygen akan sentiasa masuk dalam blood in the blood capillaries within the lamella. So a steep diffusion gradient favors transfer of oxygen, okay, from the water into the blood. So if you refer to your notes here, inilah gambar ni kan. So this is fresher water, okay, as it passes or flows, passes by the blood, okay, in the blood vessels within the lamella. Tengok so water flows in the opposite direction as blood. So the concentration of oxygen in the water is always higher, okay, is always higher at each point as it passes the blood in the blood vessels in the lamella. So 150 against 140 ini kan. So ada perbezaan. So oxygen enters 120 in the water, 110 in the blood. So oxygen enters into the blood. 90 to 80. So oxygen enters from water into the blood. 60 to 50 oxygen enters from water into the blood. 30-20 oxygen enters from water into the blood. Okay, so tengok awak punya nota kat situ. So that's why dia guna term tadi fresher water kan. So oxygen in the water is higher compared to the oxygen in the blood. So oxygen will always can be extracted from water into the blood in the gills of the fish. Okay. So that's, I think, the last question for your workbook. Okay. So do you have any questions?
No question.
Tak ada. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, saya harap awak faham apa yang selama ni kita dah discuss.